In today's episode of Time Out with Basu, we have a very special friend of mine. We've been friends for many, many, many years. The legendary Daniel Vettori from New Zealand. Welcome to our show, Daniel.
Thanks, Basu. Thank you for having me.
It's been a long time, and please remember, we have had several breakfast conversations, and it's a continuation from where we left. And it's always a pleasure chatting up with you. And you're also a sort of a Google. You know everything. I can quiz you on anything, and you'll always come with an answer. And your general knowledge and your awareness of news around you, your knowledge over sports, your knowledge over multi-directional things is just fantastic. And we are all excited today. And some of my team members here are a big fan of you. So they also know about your interest in basketball and marathon and everything. So we are all yours, and the questions are lined up. Are you ready? Before you start,
what an introduction! Thanks, Basu. The feeling's mutual.
Absolutely. Before we go further, can we know a little about your childhood? What you did when you were young? Did you play a lot of sport? And then your foray into sports and your lineage from an Italian background. Can you hear about all that?
Yeah, sure. My dad's a fully fledged Italian. He came out to New Zealand, I think, in 1958 from a little village called Roncorno, which is right up north near the Dolomites. And like a lot of Italian people at that time, they were wandering the world searching for work. Things were pretty grim in that part of the world at that time after the war. So they found my grandfather found his way to a number of places, but eventually quite a big Italian community moved out to Hamilton, New Zealand. They got a job labouring and concreting. So that's what brought them to New Zealand in the first place. And then my grandmother and my dad and his sister, and then his other sister was born in New Zealand. They all found their way on a boat out to Hamilton in 1958. And my dad, whose name is Renzo Guido Vettori, there's not too many of those floating around in Hamilton in 1958. So it was pretty unique upbringing for him, and a real change from what he was used to, obviously being Italian. But they were fully fledged New Zealanders though in a short period of time. So I grew up in Hamilton with my brother and sister, and I probably followed my brother into cricket. He was 3 years older than me, and he loved it. So I think we followed him. My father had no affinity to cricket at all. He played softball when he was young. I never saw him bowl with a straight arm, so he didn't really know the game that much. But my brother and I were, I think, addicted from a young age, and we played like all, I suppose, New Zealand brothers, is in the backyard the whole time. And then that continued on to school, and fortunate enough that we were both good enough to play for school teams and rep teams. But I continued on a bit longer than him.
Fantastic. Is there a meaning for the word Vettori? I just Googled up something and it came as carrier or something. Is it?
I'm not sure. I'm unaware. It's quite. I think it's a popular Northern Italian name. It's obviously not a very familiar name. Although I see there's an MMA fighter now, a guy Marvin Vettori, who's made his way in the world of fighting. So there's not too many popular Vettoris out there.
Your cricket achievements are something which we don't need to talk any further. It's all over there on the internet, and the world has seen, and they've seen your legendary conquests in several cricketing fields. And this show is not about your cricket. We are very interested your foray into marathon training and your transition into running half marathons, full marathons, and 10Ks. And what is your typical week, and how did all these things happen?
Well, I haven't been doing too much lately, so I need to get back into it. But I think my wife and I were always enjoyed running, and that was my primary way of staying fit during cricket. I didn't have a real affinity with weightlifting. It was always running. I felt was the way that I could stay strong, and I think it had a positive effect on bowling because of the amount of overs that I had to bowl, and that helped have that fitness base. But the marathon training actually started from a bet between my sister-in-law and a friend, and they said that my wife could beat me, and I laughed at that. And then she took offence to the laughing, and then the training started, and I think we ran four half marathons in the build up to a full marathon, and then after that we've probably run another 2 half marathons, and now we talk about doing another marathon, but it hasn't quite eventuated yet. And obviously the world's a little bit different in terms of being able to travel and to go to these go to places. But New Zealand's very fortunate that, you know, maybe I might there's a marathon in Queenstown in November. Maybe I'll target that one.
What's your best time in half marathon then?
My best time half marathon, I think, was fortunately around our sort of local course where we run, which is in Eastern Bays, and it was about 1:32.
That's 92 minutes, and you're running sub 5 for much faster than sub faster than 4:30.
So right around 4:30, I think. I'd have to look it up, but yeah. And then it was a good flat course. I always choose flat courses, and no hills.
And your best over 10K?
10K, I'm not too sure about. So I think it'd be around 41, 42.
38? Should be much faster.
No, I've never broken 40 for 10Ks. And for the marathon, I did 3:32, I think 3:33, and my wife did 3:45. So I was nervous that I couldn't see her for ages, and then with the last bit of the last sort of 5Ks, you back on yourself, and I ran past her, and
okay.
I was relieved. That I knew I had about a K.
That's pretty fast. That's pretty fast. 3:32 and 3:35 for the family. My God, Forrest Gump.
Yeah. That's it. So I mean, I really enjoy it. It's a sense of achievement and accomplishment, and the training is the hardest bit. I mean, once you've done all the training, the marathon is actually not too bad, albeit the conditions we did it in were pretty bleak. But when you're popping off for 36K training run, it's it takes a bit out of your day.
What's your typical week, Dan? What's your mileage for the week, and how many times a week you run volume, and how many times a week you do tempos and intervals?
My wife had a friend who was she's a very good runner, and she set programs for us. So looking at four times a week to run, and then it's normally one medium run, two shortish runs. I'm talking sort of 10Ks, and then one long run, and progressively each week sort of add a K onto the long run. So you normally, the program that we did was a 24-week program, and so should have started at your longest run being 10, 11Ks up until 36Ks, the sort of 10 days out from the marathon.
Oh. So your mileage for the week will be around, say, 50, 60 kilometers?
It varies. I mean, at the moment, it's only sort of around 30 as I'm trying to build back up. But when you're doing those at the back end, you're probably up between around 50 to 60.
Any work in the track at all, then?
Anyone can what?
Any work in the track, actual track, running 400 meters intervals?
No, it was all about getting out and running the roads and making sure that you put the miles together. I don't think there's anything else. I think if you want to go to put a bit more speed on around the half marathon, then I think there's some benefits from that. But it was just effort.
And
fun, lots of fun.
4 times a week.
I'm glad I did it. Sorry?
You run just 4 times a week?
Just 4 times a week, yeah.
And
no. I mean, I must admit my program has dropped off a lot, but after this phone call, you'll inspire me, Basu. So I'll be back into it.
Definitely. Lovely. So I mean, this transition into marathon probably a lot more fitter than what you ever used to be. I mean, running a half marathon at a pace of.
Yeah, I think it's always different though. I think cricket is, standing up all day, lots of short, sharp sprints. You build up a decent amount of fitness, I think, throughout your cricket career that you don't actually appreciate when I think when you see other sports going on. But it takes, as you well know, it takes a lot to stand up for a day.
I know.
It's easier said than done. And I mean, if you haven't done it, if you haven't done it for a while and then you do it again, you couldn't be any more tired the next day after a day in the field.
Right. I mean, any plans to come back then?
No. I can still bowl, but the fielding getting around is a bit hard, and everyone gets too fast as you get older. The batting becomes too scary.
Absolutely, the cricket is a very different sport, and it's a lot more anaerobic than what you train for marathon, which is a lot more aerobic. Anyway, I mean, this is a different kind of fitness, and mentally you need to be sort of focused to do marathon work, and it's not a joke, and it's just a sort of a lifestyle. It exposes your entire lifestyle. I mean, everything is around your running, your mileage, your diet, and recovery, and
you need the key thing is the key thing is to have a bet with your spouse. That's how you motivate yourself.
How's the Achilles holding up?
It's good. It's been no problems.
I mean, we all know your love for basketball. Okay, so we're going to have a lot of questions on basketball and NBA, of course. I mean, to start with, I'm going to ask you, last season, LeBron James and the LA Lakers. I mean, is it just James's magic, or it does the whole team work? And how did you see his performance, especially the last inning?
I have nothing but admiration for LeBron James. I think to think about 18 years in the league, to think how many minutes he's played, everywhere he goes, the team is dramatically better. And every time he leaves, the team is dramatically worse. So you can see the value that he brings to a team. Instantly, you go from wherever you are to all of a sudden being a title contender. And for one person to do that, I can't remember seeing that. I mean, I was young when Jordan was playing, but obviously he didn't change teams. But there's no other player that I've seen in my lifetime that whatever team he's on, instantly they become a title contender. And I think it's, there's a number of reasons for that. Obviously, his dedication to his fitness and his body. I mean, he does. There's no workload with him. He plays every game. He plays minutes. People say that he takes a little bit of a rest on defense, but definitely not the last 2 years. I think his defense in the bubble with Anthony Davis, that was probably one of the most contributing factors. That when you're 6'8" and 270 pounds and you can move like he does, it means you can shut a lot of people down. So those two factors him and Davis were incredible. The scary thing is I think they've got better this year. I think the additions of Schroeder and Montreal Harrell, they look a stronger team, which seems hard to do for a championship winning team, but they look amazing. And LeBron's favourite for MVP as well in his 19th year.
And he's passing the ball more?
Well, he's, 27-7-7. So at 36, that's admirable. I mean, I think sportsmen will look at him and Tom Brady and start saying, why wouldn't I go to 38, 39, 40? I mean, Virat, who you know so well, with his level of fitness, I mean, those sorts of guys will only be stopped by their desire to wanting to keep going. And I think basketball, and probably a little bit easier because it's you're not traveling from country to country and you got a set time, whereas I think cricket's harder to say play to your 40 because of all the travel.
And also the different type of games you play, the T20.
Yeah.
So very different. I mean, 3 sports in 1 sport.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And yeah, I mean, there's not many cricketers I know who don't. I mean, they have the ups and downs with the game, but they generally love the game. It's the travel, it's the hotel life. It's
absolutely.
I'm all over the place. My family can't travel. At least in basketball, you get 41 games at home, enough time to see your family. I know it's different now in the COVID world, but I think that game probably sets itself up more to play more for longevity. Although, albeit not many guys have done it. No one's done it to the level of LeBron.
Very physical, though. I mean, the number of injuries, and it's very explosive, dynamic, and the contact injuries. I mean, unbelievable how these guys play for so many years, and especially last year, I think by the time they finished the matches, finals NBA, they played almost 118 games or something, including the playoff.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if you look at LeBron's record, he's got another full season on top of it because of all the playoff games he's played and all the minutes he's played. So, yeah, he's incredible.
Now, since you spoke about Jordan, I have to put you on the spotlight. Michael Jordan or LeBron James, and I'll also add Kobe Bryant to them.
I don't think Kobe's in the same league as those two. I think one-on-one, Jordan would be the best. I think to get a bucket, you'd want Jordan. I think LeBron's the ultimate team player in terms of being able to bring his skill set lends itself to every facet of the game, whereas Jordan's the best scorer, I think, and obviously a good defensive player. There's no doubt about that. But I mean, yeah, it's a very tough question. I'll get myself in trouble if I answer it with my mates.
If you own a team, I mean, you can pick one of the two. Who you'll pick?
I'll take LeBron. Who do you take?
I think I will now weigh more towards LeBron. I mean, a year back probably could have been still Jordan, but what I saw last year, the way he made Anthony Davis play alongside, and the way he rallies the team along, and I think I'll go with LeBron.
Yeah, I mean, probably if we were just the day after you'd watched The Last Dance, we probably would have said Jordan, but LeBron's recently in our.
I mean, it's always with Jordan, you're resting your head with all those matches in the 90s and the way they played with Phil Jackson. It was more like a fantasy, you know. I mean, like a kid going to the Disneyland for the first time watching NBA on the television. And then 3 years, you see this guy coming and winning the championship. Then he's retiring. He's coming back, winning another three-peat. It was a fairy tale for me in the 90s. I mean, literally, it's electricity turned off. I mean, we would run to my neighbor's house and see whether, can I see the match in your house? I mean, it was just a fairy tale for me. And it was the most, amazing times of my life. But now, in understanding the game a lot more, and
same. Yeah.
I think I'll go with LeBron James. I mean, from a team perspective.
I think that's how I remember. I didn't really understand the game when I watched Jordan play, and so I probably didn't appreciate how good he was. But I was just learning that. My favorite player was Sean Kemp.
Rain Man.
I love Sean Kemp for some reason. But yeah, it's getting to learn the game and understand it a bit more to see what LeBron does day in, day out. And the other person who I think is amazing is Durant. Durant is as a scorer, he's just 7 foot. Do what he does he's.
Anthony Davis is similar to her.
Who's that?
Anthony Davis.
Yeah, I don't think he's as good a scorer as Durant. I mean, Durant's probably the best scorer in the league at the moment.
He's come back strong after his Achilles.
Yeah, he's playing a lot. I worry how much he's playing, the amount of minutes, but. Yeah.
I mean, an interesting question for you is Nick Nurse. This is a guy who coached the Toronto Raptors. They've never won a championship in history. Never. The Canadian team has never won a championship in the history of NBA. This guy comes through the grind, 6 or 7 years as an assistant in the Toronto Raptors. He's done all sorts of jobs in the first 20 years of his life. Wins a championship for Toronto Raptors. And of course, he had Kawhi Leonard that year. But last year, didn't have Kawhi, and still they did reasonably well. How do you rate this performance as a coach, and should he be there in the all-time greatest list?
I think what you sort of described is there's two parts to it. So there's obviously a great coach, that ability to take a team with no stars before Kawhi came along, just a solid team, good players, and then establish a system and a game plan and a culture. That takes so much skill to be able to do that, albeit, and also with all the grind of travel. So I think that from a coaching perspective, that's the most impressive bit, to be able to do that with no star player. But on the flip side of that, it shows you that you can't actually do it all without that star player. So I think Nick Nurse got the most out of every single person on that Raptors team, and all he needed was someone like Kawhi Leonard who could be the icing on the cake. And I think that probably sums up coaching in a lot of ways, that you can grow a team, you can build culture, and you can build systems and the style of play, and then you need the really good players to implement it. But I think the really good players implement it only when they believe in what a coach is bringing to the table. Otherwise, they can go off and do their own thing and service their own needs. I think someone like Nurse, Steve Kerr, even someone like Frank Vogel in the last season, because
James.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But to coach a superstar, I think also is amazing. So that's why I look at Nick Nurse and say he did everything he could as a coach to get that team to the level, and then their missing piece was Kawhi Leonard, and he was the missing piece only because Nick Nurse had coached them up so well. So I think that looks like a lot of hard work NBA coaching, because of the amount of schemes, preparing for different players, travel, everything like that. So it's what he did, as well as, I think, is it Masai Ujiri, that building a roster. So I think that's the other part that we forget about, is how to build a roster as well. Got dogs in the background. So.
Is it a Labradoodle?
It's a cavoodle.
Okay. I mean, coming back to Nick Nurse, the reason why, a lot of people have rated him very high is, at least the LA Lakers had a legacy. They won so many titles, and they've always had superstars. This is a team which had nothing at all. They've never won a championship. Probably Vince Carter a year did well, and then probably Tracy McGrady did reasonably well. But from nowhere, this guy brings his team to not only the Eastern Conference Finals, they win the NBA championship. And the last year, without Kawhi, they had a record of 58-18 or something. So building on something, probably married subjective additions with objective numbers.
Yes. You'd have to. I mean, that ability to adapt for Kawhi, and then to adapt afterwards. That's to keep a team afloat after you lose your best player, and to keep going. That is what you're saying. So he's obviously, objectively, he knows how to coach the team. He knows what numbers are important. He understands how to scheme, plan, prepare, build again, keep a team involved. And then, as you say, the subjective stuff is around the emotion and how do we get up for these games? How do we keep going? And to do that every day. I think cricket sometimes is lucky that you get a few days break, and then games like rugby and NFL, you get a week's break. Whereas basketball's every day, cricket's every 3 days. So it must be incredibly difficult to motivate a team night after night after night.
But basketball is a lot more coach-driven than cricket, right?
I think so, but I think it depends at what stage the team's at. So I think for like the Lakers, I'm sure they have a few set plays, but ultimately it's LeBron and AD will sort out what they need to. We're a team like, I know it'd be fascinating to coach a team like the Hornets at the moment, with LaMelo Ball, Gordon Hayward, Terry Rozier, those guys who at different stages of their career. Then they're not expected to do much, but they've actually got a lot of talent. So how do they prepare and plan for games? And so that would be fascinating for teams that don't have that outright superstar, how they actually get up for the game.
Dan, I'm going to name the coaches, and you need to say one line about all these coaches. Okay, Phil Jackson.
I've only read about him really, but it felt like he brought the cerebral aspect to the game, and he wanted his players to dive into that as well. So it just wasn't about what they did on the field, on the court, it was what they did off the court as well. And it seemed to bring a group of misfits together at times, possibly people who didn't like each other, to get something special.
The way he managed those guys is just unbelievable. Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen,
that Dennis Rodman,
Michael Jordan.
The best one was Dennis Rodman in that last dance, where he just went to Vegas for 2 days and almost missed the game. Imagine imagine if someone did that now, just popped off to Vegas for a
Oh
couple
my
of days.
God. All hell will break loose. I
Yeah, I know.
don't think any player really would imagine do that now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just watching that documentary and just saying that actually happened is
Absolutely. Absolutely.
mind blowing.
And it was different times, and the NBA was just getting a lot more professional from that point. And next coach is Steve Kerr.
Steve, it seems harsh to say, but I think Steve Kerr's he selected his job best out of anyone because he had a chance to go to the Knicks, and then he turned that down and he went to the Warriors, and he just looks like a young group of superstars that were ready to be led, and he was the perfect leader for them at the time and gave them the freedom to play a style that let them win. And then to get Durant afterwards, I mean, to bring all that together, that's the
Pat Riley.
Well, he seems to have the most respect out of all the coaches. Whenever you hear people talk, and they talk about Miami and the Miami culture, the fact that he coached the Lakers and he coached the Knicks as well, I think he's got the almost the greatest pedigree out of all those coaches.
Doc Rivers.
Well, I think the proof's in the pudding with Philadelphia this year, where he seems like he's molding a team. And I've heard people talk about Doc Rivers, that he's a motivator. He knows how to bring the best out of people, particularly superstars. And Embiid's MVP talk this year shows that's what he's about. So he's been impressive too.
Has he lost his mojo from what he used to do for the Celtics?
No, I don't think so. I think he's a motivator, and I think he probably needs new people all the time to motivate. His message probably wears thin after 3, 4, 5 years, and so to be that type of coach, you need a new crowd, you need new faces in front of you, and I think he's always been successful wherever he's gone. But possibly it also has a shelf life on it that you need to move on to another team to be at your best, and for the team to be at your best. And it actually takes a lot of self-awareness to be able to realize that maybe 3, 4, 5 years is enough time to be at your best in a job, and the 10, 12 years is unrealistic. You can still be a good coach, just albeit you might not be at the same place.
Chuck Daly and the Bad Boys Pistons. Probably my favorite coach. I just love Chuck. The way they mauled the Bulls. Well, of course, the Bulls were a lot younger at the time, but still 2 titles, and the way they played, I mean, put the scare on the offense.
It's a bit before my time, but he Dream Team as well. He coached the Dream Team, and so they all spoke so highly of him. So to bring that team together is pretty amazing.
And another coach who's probably underrated is Gregg Popovich. 5 NBA titles. Same team, Tim Duncan and crew. And they won 5 titles under Gregg Popovich. And I think he's still there as the president or something.
Yeah, he's still there. I think they made the playoffs 21 years in a row under him, which is probably even more impressive than 5 titles. So it'd be fascinating to see how they all operate and how they get the best out of their players. But he seems like he's the sort of coach that treats everyone the same, has high standards, sets an example, and has expectations that everyone falls into line around that. And then he has great players around him who buy into that and believe it, and then they implement it. And that was Duncan and Ginobili and Parker, and they were just so well drilled and disciplined, and that's why they won 5 titles.
It's like watching an orchestra most of the time when they won the title.
Yeah. Yeah, style of play, unselfish, share the ball. Everyone's just as important as everyone else. It's almost every coach's dream to produce that sort of environment where everyone just has that ability to play their part.
You see cricket moving in that direction, like NBA, like franchise cricket at least, moving in that direction, having a longer season and having a full-time sort of franchisee culture rather than the country culture.
I think that would be the ultimate from a franchise perspective, that franchises had a lot more control over their players and a lot more time with them. But I don't I don't see it's possible because all the sports that we've talked about now are the pinnacle is the franchise, whereas in cricket the pinnacle is still the national team. And so playing for your country is still the ultimate. So I can't see it ever getting there. And the other bit is also there's no consistent schedule for anyone. So January through to the whole year, you as a cricket fan or as a administrator, you can't plan for what your player's doing. If we had 3 months a year where the T20s, 3 months a year for test matches, so on and so on, then maybe. But you're probably a bit closer to things in India than me. But I don't think that's happening in the near future.
Your all-time starting five, NBA all-time starting five.
They have to be. Is it just my 5 best players, or they have to be in position?
It has to be an all-time starting five. You can't have 4 players on the same spot.
Okay. Sure. So, Jordan shooting guard. You'd have to have Kareem as centre. LeBron. I'll put him at power forward. This is a great question, Basu. Now they've maybe put in positions. So who's your
center?
Have Larry. I'll just have 2 forwards. So people would say Larry Bird, but Durant is just so amazing to me.
Okay.
So I'm gonna have Durant and
Jordan, Durant, and LeBron. 2 more spots.
Kareem at centre. Abdul-Jabbar.
Kareem. Okay. So you're playing Durant as a forward.
Yeah, as a forward. Yeah.
Kareem as your centre, and LeBron as your
forward. Who's my point guard?
Who's your point guard? You seem to like Sean Kemp. Is it Gary Payton?
Gary Payton was good, but you could make a good argument for. You could make a good argument for Steph Curry. I mean, the way he's been playing for the last while. Point guards are escaping me.
No Magic in your team?
Oh, Magic. Yeah, Magic. Yep. Well done, Basu.
So your point guard is Magic. Your shooting guard is Jordan. Power forward is LeBron. And Kevin Durant is your forward. And center is... Center?
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Oh, you're going with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Okay.
Yeah.
Lovely. Who's
yours?
My ball handler will be, point guard will be, I'll go Jordan. Then my ball handler will be Magic. LeBron there for sure. I'll have Tim Duncan and Larry Bird.
Yeah, it'll be a good game.
It's very difficult, but I think this is what I will go with. My sixth man will be probably Kobe Bryant.
I'll have Wilt Chamberlain as my 6th man to come off the bench.
100 points in a game, my God.
Yeah, exactly.
Next is you want to talk about Jacinda Ardern. We are in awe with her. The way she has carried the country forward, the way she carries herself, her demeanor, her finesse, her class, and she goes about things with very little fanfare, not looking for any attention. At the same time, you can relate with her. At the same time, you have this confidence that she's going to deliver it and she's going to do everything for the country. She's simply an enigma for all of us. You know her.
Well, I don't know, but I think what she does as a great leader is she communicates, and it must be so difficult as a prime minister to deliver messages all the time around potentially negative things or things that are affecting the country. But she, day in, day out, particularly through the early stages of COVID, she delivered a message to the nation, and everyone sat around and waited for that direction. And I think she's been consistent, and as you said, she's got an integrity about her, and she has the ability to resonate with everyone in the country. And obviously, being a smaller country, it makes it easier. But I think her intellect and her class has stood out, and not just during this time, but during the terrorism attacks, which is something that New Zealand never thought would happen to it. And once again, in those situations, and I think the other thing is that the government made very tough decisions, and they've been proven right with the way that COVID has affected other countries. we are living a normal life here with no restrictions. We can bar travel overseas. We can get on and live our lives, and there's pushback that the government went too hard, but if you see, I think if you talk to New Zealanders now, they're all pretty content that the right decisions were made, albeit tough at the time.
That's just in the Ardern. Okay, we want to know a little about patriarchy in New Zealand. Does it even exist?
Not how probably you know it.
Okay. I can read in between, I understood.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Your favorite books, Dan? Two books you would suggest everyone to read. You must read books from Daniel Vettori.
I'm reading a good one now around the Warriors from their golden run by Jack. I think it's Jack McCallum. I need to check the title, but that's a fun one to read. Just the ins and outs of how they built the team, and then how they got Durant and all those sorts of things. So that's a good fun read. That's what I read lately. I'm only just reading sports books at the moment. I've sort of given up on fiction for the time being. Just immersed.
All-time favorite book.
All-time favorite book. I like Irvin Welsh, the author Irvin Welsh, who wrote Trainspotting, and he's got a couple of good books that I really enjoy.
And we all know about your, enormous liking toward TV serials and stuff like that, especially The Wire, the Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul. I mean, we can start the Wire. I mean, even I love that serial. You introduced me to Wire, and in fact, I can actually blame you for me missing some days of work because of that. It's an unbelievably good serial, probably a raw, very natural, most original piece of work. And how did you come across that serial, first of all, and how did it really sort of affect you?
Well, I think the same as you. I remember staying up till sort of 4 a.m. a day before a game because I couldn't put the computer down because I just wanted to watch one more episode, and it's just amazing. But it also leads to my biggest disappointment in coaching, that I recommended the series to AB de Villiers and he couldn't get through the first episode. So that hurt me more. That hurt me more than anything, that AB couldn't watch The Wire. I'd never met anyone who didn't like The Wire apart from AB.
I mean, the characters, Omar, Marlo, Bunk, was a favorite character.
Yeah. The two detectives, I mean, it's been so long since I watched it. Marlo, I like Marlo. He was pretty good. Who was it? Stringer Bell.
Stringer Bell.
Yeah. And I think you can watch it again. I think I started watching. It's not a series that you can go back and watch and still enjoy it. It's not exactly one and done. It's an amazing series.
I mean, just the making was just unbelievable. I mean, your other serials like Breaking Bad, I mean, I remember talking to you some time back. If you want to watch Breaking Bad, you need to actually check into New Mexico. You need to live in Albuquerque. You need to get into that house. I mean, it's just a trip, right?
That's that's the benefits of the IPL, has been watching many series, a lot of cricket and a lot of downtime. But I think it is the cricketing lifestyle that lends itself to being able to pick up on these series and watching 6-7 episodes when you should be doing something else. But Breaking Bad's incredible. The Wire, on Game of Thrones, these are all pretty well known ones. Better Call Saul was awesome too. I really like that.
Currently, Daniel Vettori is watching
Your Honor.
Okay.
Started watching that.
Good one?
You watched it?
No, I've not.
It's got the guy from Breaking Bad in it, the main lead.
Lovely. That's it from us, Dan. It was absolute pleasure hosting you, and as usual, I mean, Daniel Cerebral Vettori was there for you guys, and it was great.
Very, very specific topics though, Basu. Basketball, some TV programs, and a little bit of cricket. Those are my general knowledge topics. Other areas, a little bit of.
I was feeling bored. I thought, a long time I'd catch up with you and make it as a show.
We should talk about the night that you came to the room. We had a few whiskeys and
yes,
that would make a better podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dan. It was an absolute pleasure. Once again,
Awesome.
thank you.